racist, sexist, Republican. These words are virtually interchangeable, at least according to most professors, journalists, and celebrities. So are they right? Let's take a look at history. The Republican Party was created in 1854. The first Republican Party platform, adopted at the party's first national convention in 1856, promised to defeat, quote, those twin relics of barbarism, polygamy, and slavery. Those twin relics were spreading into the Western territories. Republicans feared that as those territories became states, polygamy and slavery might become permanent parts of American life. Polygamy, the marriage of one man to multiple women, devalued women and made them a kind of property. Slavery, of course, did the same to blacks, literally. The Democrats were so opposed to the Republicans and their anti-slavery stance that in 1860, just 6 weeks after the election of the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, South Carolina, a state dominated by Democrats, voted to secede from the Union. The Civil War that followed was the bloodiest war in U.S. history. It led to the passage by Republicans of the 13th Amendment, which freed the slaves, the 14th Amendment, which gave them citizenship, and the 15th Amendment, which gave them the vote. In 1870, the first black senator and the first black congressman were sworn in, both Republicans. In fact, every black representative in the House until 1935 was a Republican, and every black senator until 1979 was too. For that matter, the first female member of Congress was a Republican. The first Hispanic governor and senator were Republicans. The first Asian senator, you get the idea. Republicans also kept their pledge to defend women's rights. In 1862, the Morrill Anti-Bigamy Act was passed by the Republican-controlled Congress to put an end to polygamy. In 1920, after 52 years of Democratic Party opposition, the 19th Amendment was ratified thanks to the Republican Congress, which pressured Democratic President Woodrow Wilson to drop his opposition to women's rights. In the final tally, only 59% of House Democrats and 41% of Senate Democrats supported women's suffrage. That's compared to 91% of House Republicans and 82% of Senate Republicans. There certainly was a war on women, and it was led by the Democratic Party. But while Republicans had won a major battle for women's rights, the fight for black civil rights had a long way to go. In the 1920s, Republican President Calvin Coolidge declared that the rights of blacks are just as sacred as those of any other citizen. By contrast, when famed sprinter Jesse Owens, a staunch Republican, won 4 gold medals at the 1936 Berlin Olympics, he was snubbed by Democratic President Franklin Roosevelt. Roosevelt only invited white Olympians to the White House. 2 decades later, it was a Republican president, Dwight Eisenhower, who sent the 101st Airborne Division to escort black students into Little Rock Central High when Arkansas Governor Orval Faubus, a Democrat, refused to honor a court order to integrate the state's public schools. The Civil Rights Act of 1960, which outlawed poll taxes and other racist measures meant to keep blacks from voting, was filibustered by 18 Democrats for 125 hours. Not one Republican senator opposed the bill. Its follow-up bill, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, is one of the landmark pieces of legislation in American history. That, too, survived a filibuster by Democrats thanks to overwhelming Republican support. But you might be thinking, all that's in the past. What have Republicans done for women and blacks lately? The answer you'd hear from professors, journalists, and celebrities is not much. And this time they'd be right. They'd be right because the Republican Party treats blacks and women as it treats everyone, as equals. The Democratic Party never has, and it still doesn't. Today's Democrats treat blacks and women as victims who aren't capable of succeeding on their own. The truth is, this is just a new kind of contempt. So there is a party with a long history of racism and sexism, but it ain't the Republicans. I'm Carol Swain for Prager University.
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. They see that the whites are so evenly divided that every time they vote, the race is so close they have to go back and count the votes all over again. And which means that any block, any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You can keep Johnson in Washington, D.C., or you can send him back to his Texas cotton patch. You're the one who sent Kennedy to Washington. You're the one who put the present Democratic administration in Washington, D.C. The whites were evenly divided. It was the fact that you threw 80% of your votes behind the Democrats that put the Democrats in the White House. When you see this, you can see that the Negro vote is the key factor. And despite the fact that you are in a position to be the determining factor, what do you get out of it? The Democrats have been in Washington, D.C. only because of the Negro vote. They've been down there 4 years. And all other legislation they wanted to bring up, they brought it up and gotten it out of the way, and now they bring up you. And now they bring up you. You put them first and they put you last. Because you're a chump. A political chump. In Washington, D.C., in the House of Representatives, there are 257 who are Democrats. Only 177 are Republicans. In the Senate, there are 67 Democrats. Only 33 are Republicans. The party that you backed controls 2/3 of the House of Representatives and the Senate, and still they can't keep their promise to you. Because you're a chump. Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race. And what kind of alibi do they come up with? They try and pass the buck to the Dixiecrats. Now, back during the days when you were blind, deaf, and dumb, ignorant, politically immature, naturally you went along with that. But today, as your eyes come open and you develop political maturity, you're able to see and think for yourself. And you can see that a Dixiecrat is nothing but a Democrat in disguise. You look at the structure of the government that controls this country. It's controlled by 16 senatorial committees and 20 congressional committees. Of the 16 senatorial committees that run the government, 10 of them are in the hands of Southern segregationists. Of the 20 congressional committees that run the government, 12 of them are in the hands of Southern segregationists. And they're going to tell you and me that the South lost the war. Today are in the hands of a government of segregationists, racists, white supremacists, who belong to the Democratic Party but disguise themselves as Dixiecrats. A Dixiecrat is nothing but a Democrat. Whoever runs the Democrats is also the father of the Dixiecrats. And the father of all of them is sitting in the White House. I say, and I say it again, you got a president who's nothing but a Southern segregationist. From the state of Texas. They'll lynch you in Texas as quick as they'll lynch you in Mississippi. Only in Texas they lynch you with a Texas accent. In Mississippi they lynch you with a Mississippi accent. And the first thing the cracker does when he comes in power, he takes all the Negro leaders and invites them for coffee to show that he's all right. And those Uncle Toms can't pass up the coffee. They come away from the coffee table telling you and me that this man is all right because he's from the South. And since he's from the South, he can deal with the South. And look at the logic that they're using. What about Eastland? He's from the South. Make him the president. If Johnson is a good man because he's from Texas, and being from Texas will enable him to deal with the South, Eastland can deal with the South better than Johnson. When you destroy the power of the Dixiecrat, you're destroying the power of the Democratic Party. So how in the world can the Democratic Party in the South actually side with you in sincerity when all of its power is based in the South? These Northern Democrats are in cahoots with the Southern Democrats. They're playing a giant con game, a political con game. You know how it goes. One of them comes to you and make believe he's for you. And he's in cahoots with the other one that's not for you. Why? Because neither one of them is for you. But they got to make you go with one of them or the other. So this is a con game. And this is what they've been doing with you and me all these years. First thing Johnson got off the plane when he became president, he asked, "Where's Dickie?" You know who Dickie is? Dickie is old Southern cracker Richard Russell. Look here. Yes. Lyndon B. Johnson's best friend is the one who is ahead, who's heading the forces that are filibustering civil rights legislation. You tell me, how in the hell is he going to be Johnson's best friend? How can Johnson be his friend and your friend too? No, that man is too tricky. Especially if his friend is still old Dickie. Whenever the Negroes keep the Democrats in power, they're keeping the Dixiecrats in power. This is true. A vote for a Democrat is nothing but a vote for a Dixiecrat. I know you don't like me saying that, but I'm not the kind of person who come here to say what you like. I'm going to tell you the truth whether you like it or not. Up here in the North, you have the same thing. The Democratic Party don't do it. They don't do it that way. They got a thing that they call gerrymandering. They maneuver you out of power. Even though you can vote, they fix it so you're voting for nobody. They got you going and coming. In the South, they're outright political wolves. In the North, they're political foxes. A fox and a wolf are both canine. Both belong to the dog family. Now, you take your choice. You're going to choose a northern dog or a southern dog. Because either dog you choose, I guarantee you, you'll still be in the doghouse.
I read Genesis. Cain was marked. Therefore, I believe in white supremacy. I believe in white supremacy. People, having them on the streets, we can prevent crimes. We can prevent petty crimes from turning into something worse. But we also have to have an organized effort against gangs, just as in a previous generation we had an organized effort against the mob. We need to take these people on. They are often connected to big drug cartels. They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel. And the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel. And
all right, y'all, I'm gonna try to do my part to clear the air about the term conservative. It's got a bad rap, you know. The whole conservatives are racist thing. I reckon we won't clear all the air with this one. It's like all of us are trapped in a car with someone who just farted and the windows are stuck. And the one who actually farted is trying to blame others for doing it. Needless to say, I am long tired of it.
I think what happened. Propaganda.
Why the crap is the term conservative associated with being racist? I have a theory. Okay, y'all have heard the cockamamie cop-out from Democrats who refuse to own up to their racist history. And when they get cornered on it, they try to say the party's switched. I tackle that in my audio book, Weapon of Mass Destruction. Be sure to grab your copy on alfonsorachel.com. But just like they try to cop out and say that the racist Democrats splintered and became the Dixiecrats, who then all became Republicans, which is a lie. Practically all the Dixiecrats went back to the Democrat Party. They also try to spin it and say that those racist Democrats were conservative Democrats. This is why I reckon the term conservative and right-wing has the stigma of being racist. It's because the states' rights issue is a very right-wing conservative concept. The Civil War had a lot to do with the issue of states' rights. As far as the South was concerned, their so-called states' rights were being intruded upon, and they were seen as the real conservatives for being prepared to go to war to maintain their state sovereignties. But they, in truth, were false conservatives compared to the Republicans trying to preserve the Union. And side note, I get sick of hearing from some Republicans who say that no slave was brought to America on a ship waving a Confederate flag. The slave ships flew an American flag. You defending the Confederate flag doesn't help one bit, and people will rightfully see you as racist. But the American flag represents freedom for all. The problem is that some people decided to ignore what it meant. And what these people seem to leave out is that slavery was ultimately abolished under this flag. The flag that was flown on the battlefield to fight slavery was this flag. The battle flag that was flown to keep the so-called right to make people property was this flag. Anyway, remember what I told y'all earlier? Democrats have always had liberal interpretations of the Constitution. They take gross liberties with it, and when they do, they can try to make the argument that it's okay to deprive a person of liberty without due process and force them to be their slave. Or, just like Democrats can take gross liberties with the Constitution and deprive a human being of life without due process and allow a woman to abort her child. So like I said, Democrats are typically not conservative and right-wing in their policies, save one, the states' rights issue, which is a very right-wing conservative stance. But the problem with Democrats is that they wanted to take this right-wing concept and take gross liberties with it. Just like a Democrat has the sick belief that a woman's so-called right to abort her child should be put before her child's right to live, Democrats also put states' rights before human and civil rights. Democrats wanted to use their so-called states' rights to deprive people of their right to liberty, which conflicts with the supreme law of the land. See, a true conservative is very states' rights oriented, but we true conservatives are consistent in that we know that no state can practice denying anybody of life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, or property. And if they do, then the federal government has grounds to intervene. Democrats couldn't handle that and ultimately formed the KKK. Not just because they were angry at blacks or anybody who wasn't their idea of white and their twisted view of Christianity. They had a personal vendetta against Republicans, whom they saw as the intruder upon their so-called states' rights. We Republicans have always been states' rights oriented. even after the stigma Democrats have brought to pro-states' rights-minded people. And just like I say in my book, these liberal Democrats demonize the concept of states' rights and make it out to be racist. But it's okay for them to be pro-states' rights on the things that they want, which of course will not stop there. They'll of course want the federal government to force all the states to make all the things they want legal, just like they did with abortion. Then legalization of drugs will be next, and then prostitution, then the redefinition of marriage, etc., and not necessarily in that order. Just like they did with abortion, they will use the federal government to make all states make it legal to do such things. Which is why I laugh at libertarians, because they're also the big legalize everything party, but refuse to see that not only will that lead to bigger government in their states, the federal government will ultimately get involved to make said things legal in all states. So again, Democrats took one right-wing conservative concept for their desires to do a bunch of left-wing things with it. That never made the Democrats truly conservative. They've always been liberal. And liberalism means that your needs and comforts can be met at the forced expense of others. Democrats fought to keep having their desires at the forced expense of slaves. And now they've moved on to having programs that keep people dependent on them at the forced expense of the job creators. And this certainly does not conserve our republic. It's exhausting it. I'm Alfonso Rich with Zonation. I'm a Christian conservative Republican, and I refuse to be labeled by liberals.